G'day everyone, welcome to another episode of Got the 4 Points. Pete and Rob with you here. Another week of awesome local footy action all around the state. We even might get into a little bit of interstate action this week. It's been a ripping week of footy all around local football, and we hope that your team is getting the 4 points. We're getting to that stage of the season where people are starting to get close to that ton. We love being on ton watch. It's getting to that stage of the year where the scores are starting to be settled a little bit. Teams are starting to play each other for a second time, starting to iron out a bit who's going to finish where. Some leagues, the top four look set. In other places, it's completely topsy-turvy and all over the place. We can't wait to bring it to you. Pete, how you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, doing well, thanks, Rob. You're right. It's getting to that interesting point of the season where there might be a few teams that are in make or break games in the next couple of weeks, where a few wins here or there might propel you into a finals position, and a few losses might propel you outside of finals, and another year of looking in when finals are played. And yeah, there's been plenty of stuff happening in local footy. It's also been the deadline for players and clubs who want to transfer. So there's been plenty of movement going left, right, and
Yeah.
centre in terms of players going, and even some clubs that are looking to potentially move on elsewhere. So I think there's plenty for us to get through. Rob, how have you been?
Yeah, doing very well. Yep, definitely enjoying footy and all that it has to offer. We had our club ball last Saturday night, and I reckon there'll probably be a few clubs as we get towards that middle part of the year, middle part of the season, having their mid-season functions and balls, and that was definitely a good night. Um, Lots of 4 points were had on and off the field. No, it was a good night. Everything else is going well. Excited to be looking through what's happening and what caught our eye this week. Before we do, reminder, of course, that you can find us on both Spotify and YouTube. We're getting a couple of messages coming through to our Instagram these days, which is pretty exciting. So keep them coming. Let us know if you've got something you'd like us to cover. Let us know if you've got a cool story of someone in your league has kicked a lot of goals or taken a massive hanger. We would love to know about it. We want to cover all of the things that we can. But we're going to have a bit of a what caught our eye session here, and then I think you've got a footy fire starters coming up, which I can't wait for, Pete. Why don't you kick us off first with stuff that caught your eye?
Yeah, definitely, Rob. And you mentioned big hangers, and we haven't got it in our run sheet today because it was covered quite enough on the actual news and AFL media. But there was a massive mark over the course of the weekend, which I'm sure everyone has seen by now. Yeah, that was incredibly. Flew up and then got the old double lift, which is always what makes a really good mark. Is not only when you get up, but when you get that little bit of extra height whilst you're up.
Yeah.
And that was pretty crazy. But that's not what caught my eye, Rob. I am going to take us to a league I don't believe we've spoken about before, which is the Southwest District Football Netball League. Now, I must admit, I didn't really realise this league existed until the weekend. It is in the Portland Hamilton areas. For anyone that is also going, I have no idea where this is.
Mm.
Think teams like Cavendish, Dartmoor, which of course is famous, if I'm not mistaken, for Jeremy Cameron. I believe he was a
Mm.
Dartmoor boy. Um, Coleraine, Haywood, we're talking about places like that. But I'm looking, Rob, at Heathmere. Now, why would I be looking at Heathmere? Well, for a couple of reasons, Rob. Heathmere hadn't had a win all season.
Mm.
And then on the weekend just gone, Heathmere had Travis Cloak, the one and only, playing for them. So they played against Westerns, who had only had one win for the season up to that point as well. So very, very winnable. And it was looking really tight, Rob. It was a close game throughout. And then if I just pull up the scores here, all even Stevens at quarter time. It was a 14-point lead to the Westerns at halftime. That was reduced to just a 1 point lead at three-quarter time. So, having not won a game all season, it was right there in front of Heathmere. with Travis Cloke playing, there was an opportunity to get that first win on the board. They did it. They had a 6-goal-to-1 final quarter and kicked away 11-10-76 to 6-11-47. Travis Cloke kicked five, showing that he still got it. Travis Cloke, I don't know whether this is maybe a bit of a slight on where Cloke is at with his career at the minute. Three-pointer in terms of the player point scale, listed as a three-pointer.
Mm,
That's maybe got to be a disheartening moment when you're only listed as a three-pointer as an ex-AFL player. He's slightly older, but I mean, he still looked pretty darn strong out there
mm.
when he was going for those contested marks. But yeah, that's a really strong effort. Unfortunately, not enough to lift them off the bottom. Western still have them by percentage there, but I'm sure it was a big night there at Heathmere. I think yeah, we may have said in some of our episodes last season in grand final times where teams were breaking grand final droughts and finally winning that the pub might have run dry. Well, I reckon the pub at Heathmere might have gone a bit dry. Ball night or no ball night, I reckon it might have been a big night. But that's the first thing that caught my eye in footy last weekend.
Nice, yeah, and black and white stripes there for Heathmere. I did see in the footage. So
It is, yeah.
Travis Cloke does look good in a Collingwood jumper, as I'm modelling. I don't look nearly as good in a Collingwood jumper. Um, no, good to see Clokey doing well there. Interesting that he's only a three-pointer. And yeah, well done to Heathmere. I guess Clokey might not have been the only one who didn't know the song, if it was the first win of the season. So that would have been interesting to
Potentially.
see how that rendition went. So Pete, going just a little bit further west actually, and crossing over the border, we got a tip off this week about a pretty extraordinary circumstance that's occurred in the Barossa League. Um, so Clay sent this in. He sent us a few good tips. Good on you, Clay. So Nuriotpa were playing Barossa Valley, and that's in the Barossa District Football Netball League. Going into that game, both sides were 6-1, 1 and 2 on the ladder respectively, separated only by a small amount of percentage. In their first encounter this season, Pete, they drew 8 goals, 15-63 to 9-9-63. It was Nuriotpa who were the more accurate in that game with the 9 goals, 9. Uh, on the weekend just gone, 1v2, they drew again. This is a league I just did look up before where every team has had at least one win or one loss. So it's a reasonably even looking league. But up the top, two draws for the
Mm.
for the ladder leaders. And this weekend it was 7-9-51 to 6-15-51. And once again, Barossa Valley were the most inaccurate. So both times they've kicked 15 behinds and probably count themselves unlucky or I don't know. Yeah, undeserving of winning it, having kicked 8 goals, 15. I don't know. Um, yeah, pretty interesting to have the ladder leaders drawing twice in a season. The week after we noted Uni Blues had had two draws in a row, they didn't draw on the weekend. Although the game was a 6 point margin, you pointed out to me with not very long to go in the last quarter. So that was looking dicey there for a third draw in a row for the Uni Blues. But anyhow, I think that might have been pipped by two games between two teams at the top of the ladder with two draws. Good tip, Clay. Nice
That's a
work.
that's a great tip, and that makes you just salivate a little bit for what could be the grand
Mm,
final.
yeah, good point.
Imagine just the never-ending grand final because these two teams just can't be split, and it's 2027, and these blokes are still going out there for extra time. Who knows?
And
But
and 2027 is going to be the Barossa Valley score, by the way, too.
exactly, exactly. Do you reckon maybe different to other leagues, the Barossa Valley League, the winery runs dry after a win? Maybe not the pub.
Ooh, I like that. I reckon it
I
probably does.
reckon it probably does. Rob, I'm
Maybe that's
gonna
why maybe that's why Barossa Valley was so inaccurate.
maybe maybe
Yeah, a bit wobbly on the pins in the last quarter.
few too many reds. Yeah,
Mm,
they've got the water, they've got the
yeah.
Gatorade, and then they've got the red wine. Um, and the water boy's got to bring all three out at the one time. Um, Interesting, Rob. You talk around tips that have come through the Instagram, and also looking for leagues where everyone has had a win and everyone has had a loss. Because we did get a tip that came through, and we do apologize. It took us a little bit to get to the tip because apparently, despite us telling people to Google stuff in, we aren't great at checking it all the time. But we did eventually, and it was from our good man Linus, who's a great blacks man. Um, and he was, off the back of some of our discussions, doing the same, searching for a league where all teams had a loss and a win. And he thought he'd found it, Rob. He thought he'd found it in the Mid Gippsland League, only to find something that we'd also discussed previously, which is teams getting points for the bye, which still perplexes me. And I hope it still perplexes you because he saw that the two teams on top in Fish Creek and Foster, and we've spoken about Fish Creek before because they are almost a footy institution when it
Yeah.
comes to winning premierships.
They're a permanent dynasty.
Yeah, they certainly are. He noticed that they were at the time when he messaged through 7-1. They're now both 9-1. So he knew that they'd both had a loss. And then he saw Hill End, who are on the bottom, on 4 points. And he went, Eureka, I found it. I found a league that's got that, but not to be. What he ended up finding was that they are also awarding points for the bye in the Mid Gippsland League. So a little bit strange there. Now, in saying that, Hill End probably could count themselves somewhat unlucky to still be winless. They've had two losses by 13 points and one loss by 6 points. So really, really close there in terms of those. It's a 13 team competition to quite a number of teams. Top six for finals, Linus instructs me. So I'm going to back him in on that. And in terms of making finals, it's close. All the
Hmm.
way down to even conceivably 12th. Conceivably, if results go the right way in the next few weeks for 12th out of a 13 team competition, they are
Mm.
still within a sniff of making that top six. So it is incredibly close there in the Mid Gippsland League. Maybe not quite as close as the Ovens and Murray in terms of not only points being even, but also percentage. There's a bit of a
Hmm.
discrepancy there in percentages in
Hmm.
the Mid Gippsland League, but that's an incredible find there by Linus, and that's one we might need to keep a look on and see who does end up in that top six. And maybe that's one we need to keep an eye on with both Foster and Fish Creek being 9-1 to see if Foster
Yeah.
can knock Fish Creek off.
Yeah.
As you did say, they are a football dynasty. Uh, Testing my memory here, you might know off the top of your head, is would it be around 30 senior
Yeah, I
premierships
think
that
so.
Fish Creek have won?
I think so.
So maybe that's one we need to keep an eye on. And maybe we just need to keep asking the question of why the hell are we giving out points for the bye? I'm not sure why yet. Maybe we need to put some investigation in and ask some questions of both the Maryborough League and the Mid Gippsland League. Maybe we need to. We did have Brandon Weatherson on for an interview a number of weeks ago, maybe months ago now. He's coaching in the Maryborough League, but maybe we need to ask him the question as to why they do that, and he might have the answer. But thanks to Linus for sending that in, and then yeah, Linus and anyone else, if you do see anything, just send it on in, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, nice one. And Foster Fish Creek, quite close together. That is one of country football's all-time great rivalries.
Mm,
I believe they don't like each other very much. Foster
correct.
Tigers, Fish Creek. Well, Fish Creek are the Kangaroos, but they wear South Melbourne jumpers.
They do.
Um, yeah, all right. So I might give you two quick ones here, Pete, because I've got quite a few what caught my eyes. You did mention the Carlton draft with Travis Cloke rolling out for Heathmere. Well, another AFL legend, in fact, arguably more legendary, rolled out in country footy last weekend, and that was Brent Boomer Harvey. Now, this was not part of the Carlton draft. We know there's been lots
Yeah.
of people getting involved in struggling local clubs for the Carlton draft. Great initiative. We love that. But Boomer has connections at Trentham in the Maryborough Castlemaine League. Speaking of that league, apparently he's best mates with some people who he camps next to up on the Murray River who happen to play at Trentham. And so he's got, I mean, isn't this a great country football story? The great man's played, what was it, 437 AFL games, and he's just having a few tinnies on the Murray River with some mates. I don't know, one summer evening, and they're like, "Oh, Broomy, you should come play a game for Trentham." And I bet he probably said yes over a few beers. And apparently he didn't regret it because he did actually roll out and play for Trentham on the weekend against Navarre. And the reporting around Boomer playing for Trentham is that he's going to play out the remainder of the season, at least not guaranteed all games perhaps, but
Yep.
he's signed on for the season.
Wow.
So he kicked 3 goals on the weekend against Navarre. They did win the game, Trentham, by 106 points,
Hmm.
sitting very strongly there on 9-1 in the Maryborough Castlemaine League. So well done to the Saints on securing the services of Brent Harvey. And even at the age of 47,
Mm.
he's still got it at least as far as the Maryborough Castlemaine League is concerned. And even at the age of 47, there is no defender who is going to want to play on Brent Harvey in
Yeah.
that league. I can guarantee it. So
Yeah.
well done, Boomer.
Definitely. And it should be noted as well, also coming off, I can't remember how many years ago, but he came off a really bad broken leg when he was
Yeah,
playing in the suburban leagues. So obviously he's come out of that broken leg really well, and is still causing some headaches for local footballers these days. But that's incredible to hear there about Boomer Harvey.
yeah. The
I'm
Herald
gonna
Sun reported that he suffered a broken injury in suburban footy.
a broken injury. Yeah, I've had a few broken injuries, I tell you, and they're never fun. Nothing like breaking an injury. Um,
I'm going to give you one more because I've got quite a few to get through. So let me just take you quickly to the Riddle League, Pete,
yep.
and a fantastic result there for the Gisborne Giants, who have won their second game of the season in their inaugural season in footy. Gisborne, one of those expanding areas of the state, new football team, new club there in the Riddle League. They kicked a goal after the siren to get the win on the weekend. That was Sam Van Tarling, who kicked the goal to get them over the line against Melton Centrals, I believe. And I just wanted to shout out a bloke who had 38 touches called Cameron Freak. And yeah, we've found a few good names in local footy, but if you can play and your name is Freak, you've got a you've got a career ahead of you, I think. So yeah, quick shout out to Gisborne Giants. Second win, goal after the siren. Well done, Sam Van Tarling.
Yep, and well done, Freaky.
Well done, Freaky.
That's very impressive. I'm going to move to a slightly different area here, not talking games or players, but talking finals venues, Rob. And I saw on the other day the Northern Football Netball League are moving finals, including the grand final, away from Preston City Oval after 20 years. So they've had
Mm,
a 20-year existence there at Preston City Oval. They're moving to Epping Reserve. Now, Epping Reserve, interesting decision. It is around a 20 to 30-minute walk from the nearest train station, so
mm,
it's not easily accessible by public transport. Now, it does have access to more parking than what Preston City Oval does have, and that is one of the drawbacks of Preston City Oval is the accessible parking there. But again, on the other side, it does struggle the Epping Reserve to cope with heavy rain, and there is limited cover for bigger crowds. I just this is my just keep it in the back of your mind that
mm,
if we get to finals and grand final time and it's an absolute shocking day and it's peeing down rain, I'm interested to see how the Northern Footy Netball League get on in terms of the oval and in terms of crowds potentially just getting saturated compared to what's available there at Preston City Oval. So I think that's just a little bit of a watch for me as to what could
mm.
happen. I will also say the other part that's not lost on me is the Preston Bull Ants in the VFL, who at Preston City Oval really do quite well out of that final series.
Yeah,
That must feel like almost another blow to
yeah.
them as a club as they try and remain, sustainable and stable moving through. That's got to be another little kick in the guts for them that's being moved and that they're going to lose out on that revenue of finals. So yeah, it's just a watch. If come finals
Mm.
time, the weather forecast on the Saturday does not look great. We might have a VAFA, whatever year that was in B grade, where you could be argued that it would have been better off playing in the ocean than it was on that football oval. But yeah, that caught my eye, Rob. Maybe another one we just put away for future reference.
Well, the Northern Footy League Grand Final was pretty wet last year. So yeah, I remember seeing some of those, not Division One, but some of the lower division grand finals.
Mm,
Yeah, they were pretty wet. That's very interesting. Interesting to shift it to the home ground of a Div 3 club.
mm,
I'm guessing the Oval must be in decent nick, but yeah,
must be.
there you go. Well, be very interesting to see what happens there. So it's good you touched on the Northern Footy Netball League. I'm going to give us a little look here at the Southern Football Netball League. That's one we haven't looked very much at.
Nope.
So Southern Football Netball League being Suburban 2. Um, so we're talking all the way from Brighton down towards Murrumbeena and almost down to the Mornington Peninsula. So I had a little look at the scores over the weekend, and I was kind of a little bit interested, especially in Springvale's game against Dingley. So I saw that Springvale beat Dingley by 50 points on the weekend. So Springvale are in fourth, and Dingley are on top of the ladder, and that was their first loss. So to lose your first game for the season by nearly 10 goals is quite an interesting feat, I would say. So I dug in a little bit to the results throughout the Southern Football Netball League Division 1, and it's really quite a topsy-turvy close competition. It's actually quite an interesting one to get a little bit more involved in. So Springvale Districts have previously lost to Port Melbourne Colts, who are second bottom on the ladder. They lost to Cheltenham, who were third on the ladder by 71 points. Uh, but then they only lost to Cheltenham by 7 points the second time around. So this is not unique to Springvale. I did have a little look at East Brighton, who started the season very strongly. I think they've got Alex Keith playing there at East Brighton Vampires.
Yep.
Um, so East Brighton started the season very strongly. They beat Cheltenham, uh, again, who are third, by 84 points. And East Brighton are now fifth on the ladder. East Brighton also lost to Port Melbourne Colts by quite a decent margin. And they lost to St Paul's McKinnon by 51 points, who were second. It's all over the place, Pete. There's no
Mm,
rhyme or reason to this. I don't know whether there's perhaps a lot of VFL players coming in and out. Maybe there's been lots of injuries in the clubs, but it seems to me like there are a lot of teams winning games by big margins against teams higher than them and losing close ones to teams who were down the bottom end of the ladder.
mm.
Yeah, real topsy-turvy one, and I would say shaping up to be quite an interesting run up to finals down there in the Southern League.
Right.
And yeah, well, I might give you my last one then, because you've got a footy five starter coming up. Smooth segue by me. Um, no, I did foreshadow last week that I wanted to go on Ton Watch, Pete. I did want to have a little look at who was getting close to the ton. Now, I'm happy to say that I believe nobody has quite got there yet. So we're still on ton watch. It would be fun to report on the ton coming up, but maybe we'll be able to do that this week. So I learned from the Weekly Times that our top two in country football in terms of goal kicking so far are Jason Wells of Longwarry
Hmm.
and Aaron Mullett, who plays for Wandon. Now, get this, Jason Wells, playing for Longwarry, had kicked 4 goals to half time on the weekend. against Yarragon. That took him to 99 goals for the season. And I don't know whether it was his decision or the coach's decision, but he was moved up the ground in the second half and didn't kick a goal for the remainder of the game. Now, the reporting on that was, or the quote from him was that he wants to kick the ton in a home game. And so he's decided, I think, to play himself up the ground out of the forward line so he wouldn't kick the ton in an away game. Now, it looks like Longmorrie are playing Katani this weekend, who are struggling a little bit. Um, so Jason Wells kicked 8 goals against Katani last time they played. He seems pretty confident of getting the one that he needs to get to 100, having decided that he's going to wait. I guess they're having such a good season that he feels like he can play it a little bit about himself. Um, Anyway, I thought that was quite an interesting move. Now, Aaron Mullett is on 83 goals playing for Wandon in the Outer East League. They're playing Monbulk on the weekend. He kicked 10 against them last time. Love to know whether he can kick 17 this week.
I was going to say the same thing.
Um, Geez, I'd love it if for some reason he managed to kick 17 before old
Yeah,
mate his kick one. That would be crazy.
that
But
would be
anyway,
good.
no, good stories there. Incredible goal tallies um, from two teams there in the outer east of Melbourne, or I guess out into Gippsland, really, who are having very strong seasons and
Yeah.
profiting big time from
Mm.
their gun forwards.
Definitely. And I reckon it'd be great for like AFL Vic or something like that to put on some form of, maybe it's $1,000 or whatever for the first person in
Mm,
local Victorian football that kicks the ton. I reckon that'd be great to put $1,000 up from AFL Vic every season, and then we can, really see, because then I think Jason Wells probably doesn't go, I'm waiting for a home game. He goes,
yeah,
I'm banging through another one right now.
yeah. Give me the ball,
Um,
boys.
but I also do like that thought behind, maybe Jason wants to do it in the last quarter in epic fashion, and everyone runs on. And I'd love for Aaron just to be sitting on, 18 goals by, half time, and just already be celebrating. But that's really good. We love Ton Watch, and yeah, looks like we might have one definitely come the weekend. If not maybe two, if Aaron can really get on a run. I see he kicked 10 against the team that they're playing
Yeah,
this weekend, Aaron. So it's not
yeah.
without a realm of possibility. But
It's yeah.
yeah, but you are right, Rob. We are bringing back footy fire starters for another week. We listen to the fans. We give them what they want. We probably don't because we keep doing this podcast, but um, but we're
Completely
giving
self-indulgent.
we're giving them what they want. And Footy Fire Starters is back now. This was something that caught my eye, Rob. Um, and I was going to put it in the caught my eye, and then I just thought, no, I think this is too big for just a caught my eye, and we actually need to take some time to talk through this. And what I'm talking about is the recent news. I did mention it earlier that it was the day, June 30th, for not only players to make a transfer, but for clubs to make an intention to transfer. So, of course, clubs cannot transfer on June 30, but they can make an intention to transfer and then work through the proper processes that they need to do to exit one league and join another. And it caught my eye, Rob, when I saw that the Gisborne Football Netball Club, not the Gisborne Giants, but the Gisborne Bulldogs in the Bendigo Football League, have signed or requested that intention to join the Ballarat Football Netball League as of next season. Now, Rob, to me, this is a real question of where does this leave the Bendigo Football League? I think to say the word basket case would be probably offensive to basket cases, because I think Bendigo's well and truly beyond that. I think they've been a basket case for the last couple of years and clearly are just not listening to the clubs in their league as to what they want or need to keep them in it. Now, I just want to talk through a few things that are happening here in the Bendigo Footy League and then go to you for comment. Um, it clearly seems to me that the Bendigo Footy League struggling for some relevance. And based off who we've lost recently, which is we've lost Kyneton 2 years ago to the Riddle League, we've lost Maryborough to recess, and now potentially losing Gisborne to the Ballarat League. It seems to be becoming Bendigo centric. If we do lose Gisborne to the Ballarat League, then we are left with one team outside of Bendigo, which is Castlemaine. Now, this was interesting, Rob. In the article I read, there was a comment from Gisborne President Tony Brancatisano. Sorry, Brancatisano. And I just want to read this comment that he made to you. Bendigo at the moment is talking big that they are going to try and keep us. But usually when you want to keep someone, you get in touch with them. Now, I thought that was eye-opening. That's saying something without really saying something, which is, I think Bendigo Footy League a little bit asleep at the wheel. It feels like from what he said, Gisborne there don't really think that they have been well communicated with from the Bendigo Football League. I think to me that somewhat mirrors what I've heard from Maryborough, who felt like Bendigo didn't really have a concern about them.
Mm.
And certainly something that I've read in articles in the past from Kyneton, who felt like the league just didn't really have a concern or a care for Kyneton Football Club.
Mm.
And if we do cast our mind back to when Kyneton left, there was absolutely no fight from the Bendigo Football Netball League to keep Kyneton. It was the classic don't let the door hit you on the way out. And I just can't help but wonder if maybe they regret that just a little bit slightly now with where the league is heading. Now, the other thing that I will mention is I did read another article from the Gisborne from this situation where the Gisborne president also gave the old little double backhander where he said to be competitive in the Ballarat League, we would need to pick up quite a number of good players. Now, this is a team that currently sits second on the ladder in the Bendigo League. And they're basically saying that for us to be competitive, even just competitive in the Ballarat Footy League, we would need to pick up a few more better players than the people we currently have now that are making grand finals and, you know, maybe should have won last year's grand final, albeit for a good performance by Sandhurst on grand final day. And so I thought that was another little backhander there for where the standard of the Bendigo Football League is at. So, Rob, I think pressure's building on the league's board, which is chaired by Carol McKinstry, to stem the bleeding of clubs. And the Gisborne president did say the Bendigo competition has dropped off big time, which is a view shared by league legend Derek Philo. And we've mentioned Derek Philo before off the back of the fact that we've mentioned Brodie Philo before his son. You know, they're almost football royalty around local Victoria and beyond, not even just local Victoria. So I thought that was interesting as well,
Mm.
that even legends of this Bendigo Footy League are coming out and saying that the league is in a dire straits. And there was an article 12 months ago, get this, from Derek Philo saying that the Bendigo Footy League is light years behind the Ovens and Murray League, which is a league
Mm.
you and I often talk about how good it is. And it feels like there's others in the football circle that are talking about, you know, Bendigo might want to feel like they're up there with Ovens and Murray, but in reality,
Mm.
they are nowhere near the mark. Now, the other thing I want to add to this, Rob, before I get your comment, is there has been a recent decision from the Bendigo Football Netball League to bring a new club in. Now, I don't know whether this club under the Bendigo Footy League view is going to be the saviour of the competition returning to its former heights, but Broadford. the Broadford Football Club is coming into the Bendigo Football League from all reports in 2026. This is a club that in Division 2 of the Outer East Football Netball League. Now, the Outer East goes Premier, Division 1, Division 2. So we're talking the third division, essentially, even though it's called Division 2. Back in 2023, they won a total of 2 games in that third division. And this is the club that, after being in recess themselves, for not being able to put a team on the park, to not being able to be competitive and sustainable, that 3 years later is going to come into the Bendigo Footy League and somehow be the answer to all their problems. And I suppose my final point before I hand to you, Rob, is if Broadford are the answer, I would love to know what the question is because they don't seem like the answer to me. But I'm interested as someone that's also, as we're both Castlemaine boys, Castlemaine Newstead for you. So we know this Bendigo Footy League well. I'm interested in what your take is on the current happenings there. And I probably will just add one more thing, actually. The Bendigo Footy League have come out and said, yeah, I think to the point of the Gisborne president, that they will not let Gisborne go without a fight. So it looks like it could be an interesting period. What do you make of it?
Well, it's pretty grim, Pete. It's good summary. Yeah, well done. It's a good footy fire starters, and to be honest, it's one that we've danced around. We've wanted to kind of tackle this for a while. We've had it on the tips of our tongues. And I think both of us feel sad about this, really. Not leaving Gisborne aside, the state of the Bendigo Football Netball League, um, especially from the footballing point of view, looks pretty sad. It's a dire state of affairs for a league that's in the past, and we're talking only a matter of a couple of decades or a decade ago would have quite rightly placed itself in the top echelon of country leagues in Victoria. A league that's been able to compete in interleague competitions with some of the best and against suburban football as well. Um, I don't think that's happening anymore because the talent pool has shrunk and concentrated within Bendigo. I think there's a lot of things going on here. I think some of the district leagues around Bendigo have improved in standard considerably. So thinking about the Loddon Valley and North Central leagues have got some quite strong clubs in them that are taking players away. Um, at the east, at the western and southern end of the Bendigo League, there are a lot of Melbourne competitions, Ballarat League itself, the Riddle League. There's a lot of places where players can go, and they clearly are because, as the Gisborne president has highlighted, if Gisborne want to shift from second place in the Bendigo League to be competitive in the Ballarat League, then yeah, they might need to pick up a few players. That's really quite a jab in the ribs, isn't it?
That's
That's
huge.
that it was I thought that was a good line actually. And I wonder really in some respects whether this is the wake up call the Bendigo League needs. It might actually take a bit of a jab in the ribs like this, and it might take them losing Gisborne to realise what's going on. My feeling is that Gisborne have made their mind up, and it's going to be pretty hard to stop them. I don't really know how the voting system will work. But I think Gisborne have made their mind up. I think it's a great coup for the Ballarat League.
Mm.
I think that competition will go from 11 to 12 teams, I think it is. What are we
Uh,
at? No, they're at 10 now.
they're at
They're going
10,
to
mate.
go ten back to 11, having lost Melton South to the Riddle League this year. Um, and it will really solidify a quite an interesting scenario in the Ballarat League of the Ballarat clubs and the Southern clubs in that league. There's quite a posse of Southern clubs that are all
Yep.
doing quite well in the Ballarat League. I'm looking at the ladder now. Darley, Melton, Sunbury, Bacchus Marsh are all up there in the top five.
Yep.
And they're all clubs that would be, I would say, probably within 20 minutes, 30 minutes drive of Gisborne. Um, whereas, yeah, there's some Ballarat teams doing quite well. especially East Point. But I think that'd be a good pickup for the Ballarat League. I actually think Gisborne would be pretty competitive already, and they've definitely got good pulling power from Melbourne and from the surrounding region. So good result for the Ballarat League, dire
Mm,
result for the Bendigo League. And if I was to think about what the Bendigo League, what I think the Bendigo League should be doing if they do lose Gisborne, it would be not to go in the direction of Broadford, who are clearly struggling and who are going to be such an outlier geographically in that league, especially once Gisborne go. But I reckon they should be looking seriously at Northern Victoria. Echuca have previously been in the Bendigo League. Rochester have previously been in there. There are a number of other district clubs that are very strong, like Morong, around there. Um, I think, unfortunately, Maryborough is probably lost to the Bendigo League, perhaps because of the way they've been treated, perhaps because there's just too
yep.
many clubs and not enough players in Maryborough.
Yep.
But yeah, I think they should be looking northwards, Bendigo, and I think they should be seriously looking at what's going on in the Central Murray Golden Rivers Football League area, where there are talks of league changes and
Mm,
moves. They should be looking in that direction where there's a lot of flux rather than towards Broadford.
yep.
There are a lot of people in that northern Melbourne corridor, that corridor around Kilmore, Wallen, massive growth area quite close to Melbourne. And if they couldn't be competitive in the Outer East League 2 years ago with that kind of growth area around them,
Mm,
I really struggle to see how they are going to be the answer to any question that the Bendigo League has. And I reckon the Bendigo League would be better off, bad as it sounds, playing with 7 teams next season but looking to expand themselves northwards in
yep.
the coming years.
Yeah, it was interesting reading that article where they were talking to Derek Philo about some of the Bendigo League stuff. He was certainly saying as well the fact that they've kept losing teams makes the Bendigo Footy League less appealing
Yeah,
because good players want to play in major leagues with majority of games.
yeah,
So he was sort of saying he was even saying a 7 or an 8 team league is really 14 games, isn't it?
yeah,
You play each team twice. If you move to a 7 team league, then that's 12 games, and you're really starting to reduce people's interest in wanting to
yeah.
play. If they were going to go anyway, you'd be better off to go to like a 6 team league and then play each other 3 times or
Mm,
or something like that. It is a little bit dire. I think look, the Ballarat League makes sense for Gisborne. I think that one of the failings of the Bendigo Footy League was not understanding that by not fighting for Kyneton, I think it sent a message to your Maryborough, your Castlemaynes, your Gisbornes that they don't really care.
mm,
And I could care less if the Bendigo Footy League board and chairman and the CEO or whoever it is comes out and says we do care. You clearly don't.
mm,
Like I didn't see you fight for Maryborough. I didn't see you fight for Kyneton. I'm
mm,
seeing you fight for Gisborne now, but you're fighting for Gisborne now because now you're losing relevance. And I think that what it showed to me is that they just have no clue. It's like by losing Kyneton, I think it showed that they don't care about those clubs. And on top of that, it took away Gisborne's highest gate taking of the year,
mm,
which was their derby against Kyneton.
mm,
So now Gisborne look and go, well, we don't have a really big gate taking game
mm,
because it's teams coming from Castlemaine or from Bendigo. So we don't have that huge gate that we did against Kyneton. I look to the Ballarat League. I've got Sunbury on my doorstep. I've got Bacchus Marsh on my doorstep. I've got Darley on my doorstep. Like
mm,
I've got clubs right there that I know. I've got maybe not one game that's going to make really good money now. I've got 3 games that are potentially
mm.
going to make really good money. And what that then does for them is it just helps them as a club be sustainable and thriving for the future.
Yeah,
So I just think the decision that the Bendigo League made with Kyneton was such a short-sighted decision of it doesn't really matter. They haven't been competitive for a while. Um, They're not in that sort of crux of Bendigo. They're closer to Riddle, so it makes sense. So let's
Mm,
just A-OK it. Because
mm,
I think even though it took a couple of years, I think that set the wheels in motion for
mm,
Gisborne to go, well, we really now need to consider our future within this league
mm,
and consider where we go. And I can see a realm where Castlemaine are looking at the exact same thing, looking at where does our future lie? Where
mm,
do we go? I can't
mm,
imagine Castlemaine have a really big gate taking game now that again Kyneton have gone, which is probably also Castlemaine's big gate taking game,
mm.
was
Or
either
Maryborough.
Castlemaine or Maryborough, and both
Mm,
of those have gone, and Castlemaine are now left in the middle, going, we would be better off. I don't know, potentially trying to join the Maryborough Castlemaine League if they'd
yeah.
take them, or even the Riddle League would be a better option for Castlemaine at this point. So
Mm,
I just think it's yeah, decisions made years ago that are now coming home to roost. And I just think that they've made a little bit of a mess of this. And
yeah.
I think to your point, yeah, Broadford aren't the answer.
Mm.
Um, I
Well,
think they
Broadford might have been the answer with Kyneton and Gisborne still in the league, because
maybe,
that was a scenario where Broadford would have had two teams quite close to them, where they could have had those gate takings that were good and shorter travel times and so on. That would have been a good way to build Broadford into the league.
yeah,
But when you're bringing Broadford in as effectively a standalone sore thumb sticking out there that's really struggling financially, player wise, like, yeah, I think it's going to actually be a recipe for disaster for Broadford, probably.
I potentially think so. Yeah, I
Mm.
definitely think there could be real struggles there for Broadford. I'm not sure it's the best move for them for their club. I
Well,
mean,
no,
you
they
know,
should join the Riddle League too.
they should. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about geography, but again, you know, I don't get it. The Broadford have struggled in the past.
Mm,
What level of confidence do you have that if you start struggling in the future, that the Bendigo Footy League are going to be there for you?
mm,
I don't see it, but
yeah.
anyway, Rob, I think that one will continue to play out. As you said, we've been dancing around that one for a while. I thought it was about time we went bang and just basically told the Bendigo Footy League how rubbish they are. Um, because, and again, if they want to argue it, go ahead and argue it. But God forsake me, like, geez, it'll be fun to watch Sandhurst win their 400th premiership in a row. And hell, the board might as well go up there and celebrate with the team, like hold the cup up with them. Like, that's essentially what they've done. They've driven it into a two or three team league. And really, I think what they should do is resign and get out of football and let's get some fresh blood into Bendigo.
There is also a possibility that Gisborne might win the premiership and take the cup with them to Ballarat. There would
Maybe
also be a level of serendipity in that
there
as
would
well.
be. There would
No,
be.
well done, Pete. Good summary. It's a difficult situation. We don't like seeing it. Love to see that league be more competitive.
Agreed.
Um, and maybe I mean the final thing I'd say on that is it's even not just the struggling teams outside of Bendigo. Kangaroo Flat, I don't think are receiving much support in that league either. Um,
None. None.
and they're within the the
The
confines of the
confines.
Bendigo suburban area. So
Yeah.
it's a real shame um, when you consider that that's such a growing part of the state and such a proud, strong footballing culture. It's sad to see where that league has ended up, and hopefully, as you say, there can be a bit of change and perhaps a new way of thinking
Yep.
with or without Gisborne.
Yep.
So, Pete, we should move along. Check out our paddock to premiership picks. We've, on the back of my frustration at not getting many positive bits of news to share, we both have gone for a fourth option in the paddock to premiership picks. So I'm going to start you off this week. I'll give you some good news first. Pyramid Hill doing very well up there in the Loddon Valley League, second on the ladder, massive 147-point win over Midiamo on the weekend. They play Bears Lagoon Serpentine this weekend, who are fourth, so that should be a decent game. But yep, good signs there for Pyramid Hill. Didn't get over Morong a few weeks ago,
Mm.
but still sitting pretty there in second.
Yep. I'll continue the good news, which we haven't done often on our Paddock to Premiership, where both of us have good news. But Castlemaine had a 35-point win against Kangaroo Flat in that before mentioned Bendigo Footy League. They have South Bendigo this week. Crazily, Rob, despite having only won 3 games for the year, Castlemaine sit 1 game outside the top 5.
Mm.
Maybe again, that is a little bit of a sign of the state of where that league is at. But who knows? I mean, Castlemaine have not looked competitive against any team that's above them on the ladder yet. But it only takes one scalp to get something happening. So let's see how they go against South Bendigo on the weekend.
It just makes me think, among many other things about the Bendigo League, that they should have a Final Four, not a Final Five.
Also agree.
Really, shouldn't they? I mean,
Agree.
the VAFA has 10 teams in the divisions and a Final Four.
Yeah.
There's no way that Castlemaine, having won 3 wins, should be in finals contention at this point,
No,
really.
I
They're
mean,
they're
there's
far and away
yeah,
worse than any of the top 4 teams.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so that's a sign that the top 4 teams should be the ones playing finals.
agreed.
Yeah. Okay, Pete, now I have to take you to the Mornington Peninsula League Div 2. I had my eyes on the scores down there for Coringal, for Nathan Burke's Coringal Bulls. They were playing Tyab, who was second bottom on the ladder. On the weekend, Tyab had only won 1 game previously. This was meant to be Coringal's moment, Pete, but it's absolute heartbreak. The Bulls went down by 3 points. And look, it's tough following teams when they're not winning, and we know that local footy is full of stories of hundreds, maybe thousands of people around the state are playing local football week in, week out, knowing that they probably are not going to win, but they pull on the jumper with pride anyway.
Yeah,
And just like with Lara and North Shore in the Geelong League the week before, they live for these moments in the season where you might get a win. It's one thing to be fighting for premierships, but it's another to think that this could be your week. And unfortunately for Coringal, it wasn't. So, um, they're still winless at the bottom of the ladder. It's got to give them heart, though, that they were in the fight. It was a pretty even game most of the way through. Unfortunately, the reserves also lost. They're also winless at Coringal in the men's. But I decided, in the search for some better news, to just have a little look across some of the other competitions that Coringal are competing in. And Pete, the women, they had a 97-point win on the weekend, and they're 7-4, sitting third on the ladder. So I might just have to keep a sneaky eye on the Karingal women because they are getting the job done there. But my question for you is, if you have a football club called the Bulls, which is a male cow, can the women's team be called the Bulls as well? Or is it the, can you have female bulls? Or I don't know. It's a metaphorical, not metaphysical question to ponder. Because you don't just want to call them the cows.
well, see, I was going to completely avoid any discussion of it because I had that half a second where I was like, "Oh, what is the
I
female
just
version
said
of it?"
it. Yeah,
And then I remembered it, and then I went, "I might just skate past this," but you said it anyway, so no, I was going to completely
the lady
avoid
bulls.
anything. But
Anyway,
I do also know credit to Nathan Burke after what was an absolute heartbreak. I know that he was on Monday night in Sale, doing a talk with the juniors there at the Sale Football Netball Club. So,
yeah. Uh,
you know, credit to him. I'm sure he would have absolutely loved to have had the win,
mm,
but couldn't quite get it. But still shows up and does what he needs to do. Rob North Albury, the Hoppers.
hmm.
Have been good and bad at parts of this season in what has been a topsy-turvy Ovens and Murray league. They had a 7-point win over the Wodonga Bulldogs on the weekend, um, looking pretty comfortable, and then tried to throw it away in the last quarter, the old Hoppers. They let the Bulldogs kick 5-2 in the last quarter to nearly sneak over the line. Luckily, the Hoppers also kicked a couple goals themselves that kept their head above water there against the Dogs. Now, Rob, my Joshua twins, Murphy and Minogue, still nowhere to be seen. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know whether they're, you know, backpacking around Europe together, or I'm not sure. I tried to see if they were injured or if I could find any articles about them not being available for a period, but I couldn't. But hopefully, look, maybe it's a good sign if the Hoppers can be picking up some wins without their two big spearheads up forward. Maybe that's a good sign that when they're back, they can really do some damage. In saying that, it is a danger game this weekend against the Albury Tigers. Albury Tigers have knocked off a number of good teams already in the league, and so the Hoppers need to be on their game. And Rob, I thought I'd also just mention all the top four teams are on 32 points, just split by percentage. So from 1 to 4, all on 32, just split by percentage. Um, I don't know. If you were to ask me to pick a winner right now in the Other Than Murray League, I would absolutely have no idea who I would go with. I think this could genuinely be that case of who's just looking the better team come September.
Love it. Nice work, Hoppers. I reckon the Minogue and Murphy boys are probably an island with names like those. They're probably thinking Guinness in Dublin, I'd say. Um, all right, Fitzroy, Pete, we kind of come to expect these kind of results. Pretty resigned to their fate by now, I would think, Fitzroy. I have no more optimism left to give. 15-point loss to Caulfield. Uh, it doesn't matter. Season's done. Relegation is confirmed. Good fight by Fitzroy. That game looked close. Pretty much all the way through down there at the Brunswick Street Oval.
Mm,
But yeah, no good. Old Carey this weekend. Old Carey have come good.
mm.
And so that's probably going to be a tough one for the Royals, I would say.
I just want to take you to Rob. Last season, A grade.
Mm,
Fitzroy are in A grade with us in the Blacks.
mm,
Going into that last game of the season, there was a period at the end of that first quarter where Fitzroy, based off results at quarter time, I had a live ladder going
yeah,
for anyone wanting to know how I knew this. I had a live ladder going so that we could see percentage as well because it
yeah.
was potentially going to come down to percentage. At quarter time, Fitzroy was safe.
Mm,
Fitzroy were in A grade at quarter time
mm,
last year in the final round of the season.
mm,
Now, results didn't pan out their way in terms of what they needed to happen to end up staying there, but they had done enough to make it really, really close. And then,
mm,
not quite 12 months, but close to 12 months later, and they're going to be relegated to Prem C.
mm.
It's just the drop off I just did not see coming. It's crazy.
Sliding
Um,
doors, huh?
it's really hard to know. I mean, and look, I'm quite happy because if there was the team they were going to push down, it was going to be us in terms of the Blacks, because we were down quarter time against the
Mm,
Blues, and
mm.
that was leaving us quite vulnerable. But as you say, sliding doors. It's crazy to think that had they had a couple more good quarters up their sleeve in the last round last year, they'd still be in A grade. Tullybuck Manangatang, Rob, they had an 80-point win over Tintinda. Um, they still find themselves a game outside the top five with a game against second on the ladder in the Mallee Eagles this weekend. Um, the Tullybuck story has been a case of we can beat those below us, but not those above us. If they do want that fifth spot on the ladder, then this is just not necessarily this one against the Mallee Eagles, who are doing quite well there, second on the ladder, but they need to start getting closer to these teams that are above them. They haven't really had a heartbreaker against a top team yet. They've
Mm,
kind of been well handled against all of them. So
mm.
that's one that they really need to see what they can give to try and find that scalp if they still want to make finals.
Okay, so my last one, my new paddock to premiership pick. I'm
Imagine
getting
if they
on.
lost.
They didn't.
Ah,
They didn't. Old Trinity got the win, 30 points over Old Camberwell. Old Camberwell have faltered a bit.
they
They're
have.
now third bottom on the ladder, although It's still not that far away because Prem B, apart from Fitzroy and Hampton, is a lion's den. Not a very appropriate analogy given that the Lions are one of those teams that are actually right down the bottom. But anyway, yep, Trinity looking good, Pete. Second place on the ladder on percentage, 9 wins, 2 losses, same as first place Old Ivanhoe. And the Tees have a. I was about to say the Tees have a win against Hampton this weekend. I've written it in the book already. Hampton Rovers are winless, so I imagine that Trinity should account for them fairly comfortably and march on their way. Old Ivanhoe also are playing a team a bit lower on the ladder, so I think they'll probably get the win too. But looking good for Trinity.
Very good. The other team I added off the back of you shamelessly adding another team. As I said, this one's a very different one. This is not one that I'm expecting to win a premiership because they won't win the premiership this year. But this is me getting behind the Monash Blues to get away from relegation, to get away from a triple drop, and to stay in the league they are in. They went down by 43 points on the weekend to Preston Bull Ants. Now, the Bull Ants are in the top four, so it wasn't necessarily a shocking result. Um, Now, the Blues do still sit 2 games clear of the relegation zone. They've also found another team who they might be able to put in a little bit of trouble, which is Uni High, who made a prelim last year in that division and only just missed out on a grand final and promotion spot.
Mm.
Um, they see themselves on the same amount of wins as Monash. So there's the potential there to push someone else into the relegation zone. Now, a good person that's following their team would tell you who Monash is playing this week, and that's exactly what I plan to do once I bring up the draw after padding for a little bit of time, because
Beautiful stalling there.
I clearly knew that I'd forgotten to do one thing, and that was do that. But the Monash Blues have Therry Penola this weekend. Now they are on the bottom of the ladder. Therry Penola. They have only had the one win, a percentage of 49%. So this is a game that I need me Monash Blues to win. They really need to come out firing. So that's a really winnable game there for them. And the other thing I did just want to look at is in terms of something that we've done before, where we've looked at best players and the like, because I do know that there's been quite a number of raps around a couple of players there at Monash. Archer Vague, who's featured in the best 6 times this season, and the other one who I believe featured in the best on the weekend was Fraser. Sorry, I'm trying to find his name.
That's a weird name.
Yeah, Fraser. Have you not heard of him? He's incredible. But it is, sorry, as I pull it up, Fraser Bennett. So
Yep.
I know that he's also been having quite a good season, and that was in the certainly the wrap up from a few weeks back that I read about the Monash Blues. So yeah, this week, hopefully they can have a win. Hopefully Uni High don't have a win. Maybe shouldn't be barracking for that, but that will at least push them from 8th to 7th if that does happen, and just gives themselves a little bit more breathing room. So I'm still really pushing for Monash to get away from that relegation zone.
Very good, Pete. All right, folks, that's the summary for your round 11 or your round 12, depending where you are in the state and what your league is. We hope wherever you are that your team's doing well, and we hope they get the 4 points on the weekend. For some of us, it's a week that we have this weekend before the double bye. I
Mhm.
don't know if there are too many leagues doing that. I think probably quite a few leagues would have at least one week off in the middle there. But yeah, if your team's having a break, have a nice little winter holiday. If your team's playing on the weekend, let's hope they get the 4 points. And we'll be back with another episode for you of local footy next time. Catch you then.